Hey everybody, how's everybody going today? Welcome back to the show. We are here with a very, very special guest today, with a co-host, I guess you could say, because you have your own little thing going on as well. But I don't want to like to do a whole lot of, I guess you could say introductions, but this is Tenaj Moody. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up.
Hi, y'all.
We got the trains going on in the background, so if it may be a little loud at times, but we're making it work. It's a beautiful day today. So a little bit about Tenaj. We have
Carry it with you.
Yes, Carry It With You. Two-time best-selling author with Carry It With You and Resilience Through Yoga. That's one you co-authored with. We have a keynote speaker, victim and criminal justice reform advocate, a violence prevention educator, and the founder and CEO of Life LLC, which is a domestic violence prevention program, which was established in 2012. So we're a decade now.
A decade. You're making me sound old. Yes, we're a decade.
My goodness. So aside from all of those accolades, who is Tenaj Moody?
I love that question. One, thank you for having me.
Yes.
If y'all don't know, we've been trying to get this going.
Oh my goodness. It's been like a year.
Jesus. For a very long time. So I'm just glad that we finally had a chance to do this.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So who am I? Amongst a lot of different hats that I wear, I think part of this is I'm a founder, I'm a daughter, I'm a dog mom, I'm a wife. I think of myself as someone who has a lot of different layers. But I think overall is I'm a person that is trying to build a foundation.
Wow.
I'm trying to build something out of nothing. And not to get really deep, but just from where I come from and where I am now, I look at everything as a blessing. And so like, who am I at my core? I'm a hustler, I'm a grinder, I'm a go-getter, and I think I'm a good person who has a really big heart, and I just want to leave a mark and have a positive impact on the people that come across my journey.
Right. And I definitely have worked with a lot of people. I've seen the testimonies on, your website, and it's nothing but good things to say. And reading your book, I've read it twice now. So I went back and read it. Phenomenal book. If you don't have it, make sure that you pick one up. But it basically just talks about, your struggles, as a, I guess as a young kid and the trials and tribulations that you have, overcome all the way into becoming this, full-on adult, and understanding that, people need help, and people like you that have had the similar stories that you've had, would love to benefit, I guess, from things that you are, putting out into like the environment and putting out into, fruition with the different things and the different programs that you put together.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an astonishing book. It was just like
what was your favorite part?
Ooh.
Like, what was one thing that like stood out to you and you were like, I'm gonna take this away with me?
Oh my goodness. I think honestly,
I put him on a spot, yo.
Yeah. I think honestly, when you were talking about your father, and kind of like that whole aspect, and how you felt as though that like you had this one thing that you said, and I just read it yesterday. I was like, I'm gonna bring it up, but you talked about how the lack of his presence, built a lot of I guess insecurities within yourself, and that kind of ties into like a lot of things that I was thinking about. I come from a very different, I guess lifestyle than you. I have, two parents in the home. They've been married 25 plus years, and but to hear somebody else's story of, them not having, a father figure around, and the kind of like mental aspect of it, a lot of people don't understand that, or kind of underestimate that. I think a lot of times when we talk about, fathers not being in the home, we most so talk about males or men, and how they don't have that role model. But there's so much that women need from a father as well.
Exactly.
And I think as though like a lot of the first interaction with somebody of the opposite sex comes from that. I guess the dynamic between mother and mother and mother and father, like how to
the masculine and feminine.
Yeah. So I think that's something that I really wanted to dive in with you, and I guess so. Not having that father figure, you tend to talk about like your mom a lot and how she was basically your rock.
It's my ride.
And so I wanted to kind of dive a little deeper into that. And I guess like one of the first questions that I have is like, where does your strength come from?
Where does my strength come from? One, I also think it'd be, just as a sidebar for everyone listening too, like for people to chime in, is just like, have you been raised by a single parent? Have you been raised in a 2-parent household? And like, what has that been like? Because everyone's experiences are going to be different,
right?
And to be honest with you, my strength has come from my mom, and that being the person that raised me, right? And who a majority of my life I spent, my life with. And my strength comes from her just because I've been able to witness her overcome so many different trials and tribulations that a common person would not be able to survive.
Right.
And I talk about that like in the book, of just like her being what I look to as, and not looking at her as like a superhuman, right? Because I don't want to take that away from her just being a human being, but I really do look at her as a superwoman to me.
Yeah.
Because I've just never met another person who has consistently been able to, one, not only be a single mother, work 3-4 times,
right,
harder than anyone I've ever seen, right? Like, and still at the same time be able to raise a child and have a shelter around your child, have food, like all of these basic essentials that I think sometimes are really overlooked when it comes to just like parenting. But those things are really hard for people to have access to if that wasn't something that they were given at an early stage in their life.
Right.
So my strength comes from my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And in the book, you talk about how there were stints of you being homeless.
Yeah.
And when I first heard that, that story, I instantly thought of Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes,
the movie.
That's my movie.
Yes.
That's my movie.
And I was, and like, so I'm more of like when I'm reading, I become like very, very visual. So like having like watched that movie and then kind of like putting you in the inserts, and so like how was that, because I don't remember how old you were, but how was that whole aspect of jumping from place to place, home to home, not really having like a stable place of calling home? Like how was that whole situation?
Thank you for asking. I'll say this is like, in the United States overall, like poverty is a major issue.
Right.
I'm not about to sit here and lecture people on the statistics of that, but it's a big issue in the United States and really globally, right? Of people not having housing and income to support housing. And so I want to start with saying is like, I recognize and acknowledge that I know I'm not the only one who has experienced these things, right? And with being homeless, it was definitely like, when I was writing it in the book, the way I looked at my life even before I saw the movie was very much like The Pursuit of Happiness.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, there were like scenes where they were actually in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Y'all remember?
Yeah. I definitely remember.
And
that.
They were in the bathroom and they slept in the bathroom, and you see Will like grinding, trying to get a job, trying to make sure his kid's going to school. The core values of that and of who he was and how his child in the movie, stuck by his side and was witnessing all of that and was still trying to live like a kid.
Right, yeah.
Like that is very reflective of my journey. And so with the different transitions, what I will say is this. Because I was so young, like I was probably like preteens.
Okay.
So like because I was so young, my mom did a really great job at making everything like an adventure, right? And so like I didn't recognize that I didn't have.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it was very much like, oh, we're living inside of a car, or we're sleeping inside of a bathroom stall because we don't have a place to live right now, or I'm sleeping on a cot in a shelter home. But in each of those experiences, it was never, I'm actually sleeping inside of a car. It's like, we're having a sleepover tonight, and we're, you know, the next day, like, we're getting ready and going to school and getting ready. So it was very much, I would say, at the time, it wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, at the time, I didn't recognize the struggle in that. Right. Because it was my life. Right. It was just normal to me. And so the transitions of that for me at a young age, I would say didn't have an impact then, but had a very long-term impact later in my life, recognizing everything that we were able to overcome. Right. Yeah. I will say this though. There was a time in school, like, you know, having to move so many different times, we had to, sorry mom, we had to like get people's different like addresses so that I could go to a school because we didn't have like a set location. Yeah. And so sometimes, you know, my mom wanted to make sure that I was going to good schools. And so, you know, I went to a lot of different schools, and one school specifically was in the suburbs. I went to school in Levittown, and Bucks County, and predominantly white school. Yeah. And so really, again, being the only Afro-Latina woman in the school, it was very different for me. And I'll say is, what I did recognize was that simple things of the way I was dressed, or simple things of just like the way I talked. Right, yeah. Those kinds of like cultural things were different. And that's how I would say is one thing that impacted is like I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. Right, okay. And so that was like a very uncomfortable feeling. And it's like you kind of have to be almost like this chameleon. Yeah, I definitely understand that. You know, like a lot of people that, you know, are jumping around from like house to house, or, you know, even just might be military or things like that, kind of, you know, have a hard time, like, I guess, making friends, because it's like you're jumping from place to place. Is that something that you also kind of had, as well as being, you know, kind of, you know, with, you know, being Afro-Latina and in a different space, in a different environment? Would you say that that was something that was kind of prominent, or you felt like you were more so, okay, like, you know, school, I'm going to try to make friends, and, you know, like, because, you know, this might be all I have, like, or, right. So how did you kind of take that approach? So I'll say is, one, I'm a Sagittarius, y'all. So Sag gang, gang. And so with that, I am a very extroverted person. Yeah. I'm very social. I don't really have any challenges when it comes to making friends. In fact, I think us moving so many times, and going into so many different environments with so many different people of different cultural backgrounds and races and ethnicities and gender, it put me in a position where even to this day, it's like I can walk into any room and be able to speak anyone's language. Right, yeah. And it resonate with them. And so I actually think it's been a strength, because in wherever we were, I was able to make friends. Right, yeah. I made friends with this one girl. I remember her name was Amy. I'll never forget Amy. She was so sweet. And one of the things we lived in this area where there was this like lake. Yeah. And one specific thing, I don't know if you've ever done this as a kid. I could be a little weird. Okay. Have you ever caught tadpoles before? Like in a little lake? I have or before, creek? Yeah. Yeah. Not on my free time, but don't try to play me. Like on a field trip, yeah. Okay, so I was little. I was a kid. Okay. And so, you know, like that's just an example of like the kinds of friendships I remember. You know what I mean? That had an impact on my childhood and even in my relationships and the way I communicate with people. Right. Okay. Yeah. And I guess kind of going back to the book, who would you say that that your book's audience is for? Like when you were creating the book, or, you know, when you had the first idea, you were like, I'm gonna make it because of this and for
this, demographic of people. So what would you say?
So let me ask you this first.
Okay.
All right. When I first talked to you about the book,
yeah,
and you could be real, when you first saw it, were you like, oh, this is more of like a female energy book? Or were you like, okay, this look interesting, I might check it out, I don't know if I'm gonna vibe with it, but we're gonna see?
I think because we had conversations before.
Okay, see,
I think it was a little biased. But I think that on the outside, I guess, looking in, I would say that, oh, this is more so, for, women, I guess you could say. Yeah. So I think that would probably be like the first thought.
And after you've read the book, now twice you've said, what would you say? Like, what would you say that this, like, in terms of I know who I wrote it for.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to know, like, your perspective of who you think this audience would be for. Like, who do you think would resonate and read this?
I honestly think it's for everybody. I think it's for everybody because it almost has like a dreamer type of feel to it. And I feel like everybody dreams. Everybody has dreams and aspirations. And everybody also has struggles, Yes. And so I think like when it comes to who this audience is for, I think it's for anybody who, who first loves to hear a story and then also can relate to, somebody else having struggles in their life and how to overcome those things.
A dreamer. You said something that was like so key. And when you just said like it's for everybody, that's exactly the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Right. So the title, Carry It With You, is essentially about one, carrying their experiences with them, but also with the understanding that whatever you have overcome or whatever you're currently experiencing or going through or growing through does not have to define you. However, everything that you have overcome, right, or everything that you are currently growing through are not necessarily things that you should be ashamed of.
Right.
And ultimately, those are your strengths. Those experiences are your strengths. They are what makes you who you are, and that's what has brought you to where you are.
Right.
Right? And so for anyone, that's whatever those experiences are for them. Right? Like whether you're raised in a 2-parent household or whether you're raised in a 1-parent household.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's whatever those experiences are for you. And so I wrote it with the intention of, back to what you were just saying, is like anyone who's chasing a dream, anyone who is fighting adversity, anyone who has experienced homelessness before, anyone who is looking for love, trying to find love, or trying to leave a relationship that's not healthy for them anymore. Right. And so, or anyone who may have lost a parent. Really, back to what you said, is like I wrote this for everybody,
right? And
I'm hoping on my like Meek Mill, can I curse?
You can if you
want. On like my Meek Mill shit is like I'm hoping that this can almost be like an anthem because I'm from Philly.
Yeah.
And so 215 represent always.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that this could almost be like from where I'm from, and the people that know me, that like I'm representing that well,
right?
And so it's for everybody. Although the cover can be a little deceiving, and you're like, oh, this is like more female energy, but it's for everybody,
right? And that's definitely something that I took from it as well. And though I think the one thing, or there's a lot of things that I like about the book, but I think the main thing that kind of stood out that made it really different and unique is that at the end it has kind of like a self-reflection portion an aspect to it, and there's places at the end of the chapter where you can like write, where there's questions you ask the audience, and you can write in the book of like whatever your question is. And I think that like self-reflection I think is very key, especially when reading books like this. It makes you really like not only like sink in and retain what was being said in the chapter, but also kind of trying to relate that to your life and aspects. And even though somebody might not be going through the same thing in an aspect, you can always find a way to relate to somebody, I feel like. So I really enjoyed that aspect.
What did you reflect and write about? If there was one thing, could you remember like one thing that you reflected and wrote about?
One thing that I wrote about,
or maybe thought about writing.
I think a lot of it had to do with, I guess, kind of like the relationship aspect of it. the last few chapters when it talked about relationships and healthy, unhealthy, and toxic relationships.
Yeah.
And so I think that even aside from love life as well, I guess you could say, with friendships and things like that, kind of doing a self-reflection on like the relationships that I have in my life and how is it either benefiting, how I'm either benefiting or like is it hindering me in a sense.
Ooh.
And so I think that's something that I really had to struggle with, especially when you were talking about your whole relationship.
Did you find any aha moments where you were like, oh wow, like I didn't even like, because one of the things that we talk about in the book is the relationship spectrum, what you just described, right? So I speak about what are warning signs of an abusive relationship, what are signs of a healthy relationship, and what are signs of an unhealthy relationship, which is essentially the relationship spectrum. So when I was writing about that, I'm interested to know is like, did you come across any kind of like aha moments where you might have been like, oh wow, like I didn't recognize that this actually was a sign of like an unhealthy relationship, or oh, actually this is a very healthy relationship. Did you come any?
I think more so the aha moment was when we were talking about like, how am I going to, okay, so let me put it this way. I kind of thought of it through the lens of me being the counterpart in a sense. And so like, how can I, better help somebody who has been through trauma or been through, struggles and things of that nature. And so I kind of looked at it through the lens of that, because I feel like for some reason I always tend to find, like, especially like for my love life, I guess you could say. Is there another way of saying love life? I don't know if I like saying that.
Maybe you could say like, it does kind of sound like my love life.
It sounds kind of cheesy.
For like love in my life.
Yeah.
Okay.
For my relationship aspect of
I feel you. Okay.
Yeah, so for my relationship aspect, I tend to struggle with how can I, like, understanding that somebody is going through something, and like how do I be there for them without overstepping boundaries.
Okay.
And so that was one thing that I kind of had an aha moment about, and I really had to self-reflect. And that's one thing that I wanted to ask you, kind of being, somebody's counterpart to somebody who's been through struggles, or say been through, domestic violence, or, mentally, emotionally struggling, or whatever it is. How can the counterpart, I guess you could say, like, either be there for them, or, how do you have the interactions with that type of communication to where, you feel as though that you're there for them and they're feeling wanted, I guess you could say. So
yeah, that's a really great question. And so like the question that I'm hearing you ask is like, how do you become a supportive friend or a supportive spouse, partner, right? Or just maybe even just kind of being like a bystander, right? And so I want to preface with saying that like my experience and the lens that I'm coming from is, one, being a survivor myself, and two, also witnessing abuse growing up in my household, and even witnessing friends that are very close to me unfortunately experience abuse. So I'm coming from that lens. And additionally too is like, from my background, like I've been doing this work, as you mentioned, like over a decade now. Like I'm a licensed behavioral specialist. I work in the nonprofit world, specifically focused on women's health issues, focused in the criminal justice field. And so, this is what I do.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm still learning and I'm still growing.
Yeah. And
I will say is that it's very important as someone to be supportive, whether this person may be experiencing an unhealthy relationship, or even a abusive relationship. And for someone to kind of be supportive, one, it's important to note that a person may not leave a situation that's unhealthy for them or abusive like 7 to 8 times.
Wow.
It takes that long. And so it's very important during that process is to be patient and to have that understanding, because sometimes if the person is lucky enough, they'll actually leave and leave alive.
Wow.
It gets real. And what happens is some people may not have the patience to withstand that, and that's okay, because vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, which is a person who's witnessing it, is also a real thing.
Right.
And, you know, for anyone who is listening, you know, to your podcast is to note is that being a supportive person to someone who is in these kinds of relationships that is experiencing abuse or toxicity, it's so important for them to take care of themselves during that process too.
Yeah.
Right? Because that can be really challenging and difficult to see the person that you love and care about experiencing those things.
Right, yeah.
So it's so important. So one is to practice what does self-care look like for that counterpart.
Right.
That's one. Two is like not only just being patient, but also being able to be a listening ear. Not all people, and I don't want to sit here and say like I'm speaking for all survivors, but I'll speak for myself and what I had experienced. One thing that I really just needed at that time was just someone to listen to me and to not judge me.
Right.
Because that's a lot of a fear, is that when a survivor speaks up about what they're experiencing, is that one, no one's going to believe them. Two, police may get involved. Three, like they're going to sit here and judge me and ask me questions like, well, why don't you just leave? One, never ask that question, right? Because there's so many extraneous factors as to why a person doesn't leave, and that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But additionally too is like being a listening ear, and then being there and just letting people know, like, you know, I may not know what to say right now, but I'm here for you. And, you know, whenever you want to talk about it, just know that there's an open door.
Yeah.
And then lastly is like, if you have resources, if there are resources that can be shared, whether it's in the community or victim advocacy programs, hotline numbers, that's very important.
Yeah.
To share continuously with your friend or with your spouse, whomever, when the time is needed.
Right.
The last thing I want to say too, that's really key that people don't think about, is if you are a counterpart and you know someone who may be experiencing these things, having code words is really important. So for instance, like, Dee, if you were experiencing something, right? Let's just give a scenario.
Right.
And what's your favorite color?
Green. Okay.
So between you and I, you would text me green. Only you and I would know what that code meant. Right. Right. And to me, that's our code word that I'm in trouble. I need help. Right. So it's important that whoever your friend is like, and that has been established that, you know, this is going on, is offering, hey, can we have some kind of code word? Like if you ever were in a very serious situation, you needed help, I can be there for you. Right. So I would say it's just kind of like quick tips.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful. I think the main thing that I kind of got from it was just like communication.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I think obviously, you know, communication is, if not the number one thing that needs to be in a relationship. And I think that it would be important to, you know, talk about those things, but also making sure that, I guess, your partner feels comfortable talking about those things, and also giving like a comfortable, you know, comfortable environment,
space,
environment, space. And it's not like oh, you need to talk to me, but like, hey, like you said, hey, I'm here if you need to talk or whatever it may be. I'm here for you. Like, you know, just kind of opening your heart and being like, okay, you know, I'm here for you. If you don't want to talk about it now, you know, I'm always here if you want to talk about those things. And I think that like goes a long way in the process.
It really does.
And I think also going as well with the communication is like just leaving space, and like, hey, we're not may not get to everything right now or whatever it is, but it's like just being level-headed with everything. Because I think even sometimes, you know, I guess when somebody has gone through things, you know, like you said, making sure that you're taking that space too, because it's difficult for both parties.
Exactly.
And so I think like also taking a, you know, space with that as well for the other person who is trying to help, because sometimes I think that not having that can lead to some type of resentment or lead to, you know, feeling kind of ill towards the other person, like, oh, you're bringing me down or whatever it is, like, and I think it's honestly just all about communication.
It is.
With us talking about, I guess, the communication aspect and what you had, I guess, kind of gone through with domestic violence and things like that, How hard was it to get back into the flow of like meeting other people and getting back into the dating, all of that? How, like, what was that process like for you?
A process.
Yeah.
A process. I say a very long process, and I think it was a process of a lot of healing,
Hmm.
a lot of self-reflection,
Hmm.
uh, and a lot of trying to find who I am again.
Hmm.
Because often what happens in these relationships is a person loses their sense of identity,
Hmm.
who they are, uh, not really having any confidence or self-esteem.
Yeah.
And not to get like dark or anything,
Hmm.
but it definitely was, I would say, a transformation of rebranding
Hmm.
who I am
Right. Yeah.
and who I wanted to be after leaving a relationship where I completely had lost that identity,
Yeah.
lost control of my life,
Hmm.
even to like the things where it's like picking out what I wear,
Yeah.
to people I can or cannot talk to,
Yeah.
you know.
Because you talked about like the controlling aspect of
Yeah.
of a toxic relationship. Hmm.
And so it's like, going from that to just then like, okay, I have control back over my life. Now what do I
Right.
do? Right? Because it becomes someone's norm for so long.
Right.
And so to get into that process, it took a lot of time to do all of those things, a
Hmm.
long time. However, there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Things just take time
Hmm.
and grace. And for me, prior, I'm a very like spiritual person,
Hmm.
and I know that what I have experienced and what I've been able to grow through, like I could not do it on my own without having a higher being to help
Hmm.
guide me through those
Hmm.
experiences. Um, and so, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for me, I was able to get back into the dating world.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
The dating world, or like finding love again,
Hmm.
once I was able to find my voice again.
Yeah.
Once I was able to be confident in, I feel like I'm talking, once I was able to be like really confident in who I am. And I'll
Yeah.
say this is like, no one, this is the thing. A person does not have to be completely, for me at least, and people may not agree with me, and that's
Okay.
okay. Is like, there shouldn't be an expectation that I'm going to come into a relationship completely healed,
Okay. Yeah.
right? For me, relationships are about a union,
Hmm.
right? I think it's important to have a balance.
Hmm.
And sometimes the balance is maybe unequal in different periods of that relationship. However, I think, when it comes to the relationship, is that you don't have to come completely healed.
Hmm.
Because sometimes what people can use that almost as an excuse as to why they are fearful of going into another relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And that may miss an opportunity for someone to find love in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I'm not ready. Like.
yeah,
Hmm.
because who's to say that maybe this person that you find could be the person to be a supportive
Yeah.
partner to help guide you through that?
Right.
Because we all need support,
Yes.
and healing to me is not something that a person should have to experience alone. Right?
Hmm.
And so I think it's important is that along that healing process and along that journey, for me, it was that I didn't have to come into a relationship completely healed,
Yeah.
but at least I'm working and striving towards that.
Hmm.
And I was able to, fortunately, come across a person who understood that, a person who understood everything that I was bringing to the table,
Yeah.
and wasn't judgmental,
Hmm.
and was willing to say, you know, I might be able to help you and support you through this.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that was kind of like the transition for me, was just like, healing, understanding my identity again, finding my voice again,
Yeah.
but also coming with the realistic perspective of that I may not be completely healed when I find the person.
Right.
But I have to find the person that is willing to accept me, flaws and all. And not to say that I had flaws, but I'm just kidding.
So now with being married,
yes,
shout out to my man Jason, man. Now with being married, how is, you know, that transition to being searching for somebody, and, you know, and then now somebody getting on one knee and saying I do, and then having the whole wedding, and now, you know, forming union with somebody else. How is that whole, I mean, this would be a long conversation, but I guess, like, how has your experience been with everything?
Yeah, so, and that's what thank you for asking that. It's June will be a year.
Really?
That we've been married.
Wow.
And if, like, when Jason watches this, I know it, like, for me and him, we look at each other and we're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, we made it.
Yeah.
Because marriage ain't for the weak, y'all.
No, it isn't. It
ain't for the weak.
It isn't.
Relationships ain't for the weak.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. But
Yeah.
I think even with, like, I don't know, but I think, like, the culture that we're in now, it's almost kind of like straying away from, I guess, marriage in a sense, or being committed. I think it has to do a lot with, I guess, environment, but I think more so
technology.
Yes, technology is a big one, but I think also even just the I guess, like, the statistics that go with everything, how you kind of see, like, 50% divorce rate and all of those type of statistics that go out that negatively bring, like, an impact, like, negatively impact, you know, thoughts on, you know, marriage and things like that. And I think it's always good to, and it's like, even, oh my goodness, even just like the podcast people, not me, but, like, you know, those, like, Twitter think pieces, I guess you could say, and the single person is always talking about what marriage is to them and stuff like that, and it's just like, it's not making sense, because it's like, you haven't been there. Exactly. Where's your credentials? You know?
Yeah. Show me a resume.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to, you know, I guess, like, take some time. Obviously, you know, relationships and marriages aren't easy, but I mean, sticking out 1 year is definitely a major. It's definitely a major.
Milestone.
Yeah, it's a milestone.
People don't make it to 1 year.
No.
People don't make it to 1 year. You know, it's crazy because, one, I mean, let's start with this. Let me start with this. It's just like going back to what we originally talked about being raised in a 2-parent household, right? And being raised in a single-parent household. For me, I've never witnessed. I've maybe been. I could count on my hands how many weddings I've been to.
Wow.
Right. Like, so, seeing marriages, seeing a union like that, that becoming a norm is not a norm for me, right? Like, very few women in my family are married. You know, like, even seeing my mom be married, I've never seen my mom be married before, right? And so, like, marriage was never really, and I talk about it, you know, like, marriage was never in my mind.
Right, yeah.
You know, because I wasn't raised around that.
Exactly.
You feel me? And so, like, for me, like, my vision was like, I'm just going to be a businesswoman. I am going to live in my condo, carry my suitcase around, go to my meetings in my nice Tesla, speaking into existence. You know, that was me. And I thought it was. So it wasn't something that I had envisioned. And so, like, I'm interested to know from your perspective and, you know, like, from your experiences as well, is like, what is it like being raised in a 2-parent household? Because I don't know how long your parents have been together for, and, like, how has that influenced the way you see your relationships and even your relationship now? Like, how has that influenced that?
Yeah, I think that, so my parents have been married, I want to say 25 years now.
Wow.
Or about to be 25 years.
Shout out to them.
And yeah, for sure, definitely, because that is a bigger milestone.
Yes, that's huge.
Yeah. And so I guess kind of seeing that, as a young kid, you don't really understand what's being instilled in you at a young age without really knowing. But then kind of looking back, being older and understanding how major that is, and that a lot of people and a lot of my friends don't have that. Like even just in my neighborhood, I would hang out and, you know, I would go over sleepovers, and, you know, the dad wouldn't be around, the mom wouldn't be around, or whatever it is. And I guess looking back as an older man now, I guess not old, but, you know, but, you know, like older, I can like now see, you know, that it's not something to take for granted, and also understanding how blessed that I am to have that, because I know a lot of people don't. And it's definitely I don't even know how to describe it. Like, that was a good question that you just asked.
Like how do you feel like that's influenced?
I think
maybe subconsciously.
Subconsciously. I think it instilled a lot of confidence in me. I think the main thing when I think about my parents is how supportive that they are. Like my dad, I can count maybe on one finger how many games he's missed, like my entire life. Like me from playing 4 or 5 years old in basketball all the way up until playing in college. Like I can't, like, there's never a game. There's one big game where he missed, but he had to do something and he was watching on his phone in college.
But you remember that.
But I remember that. That's like an outlier.
Right.
You know, like usually he's always there. I mean, he, like, even the men's leagues that I'm in, he's coming. It's 9, 10 o'clock at night. You know, ain't nobody in there but him. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, and even, you know, just with my mom and like coming back home and, you know, my mom, you know, being home, and I come in and my room is made, and she had made my room, or like dinner is always served. You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, like, or maybe my mom takes me out, and then my dad, he's at home and he's cleaning up and things like that. Right. And it's just like, the more and more I reflect on it, the more and more grateful I become, because I realize that, like, you know, I'm very blessed to be in a position of like having 2 parents. And so I think that like instilled in me that that's something that I want as well. Like I want to be, you know, 30, 40 years marriage, like, you know, and finding the right one for me, and, you know, just doing all those things together. Like I told my dad I wanted to be a young dad.
You sound like Jason. That was like, that's so funny, because similarly, and the reason I asked you that is because like what you're raised around and your environment is something that we later model. You know? And like, it's so interesting that you said that, like, you know, you want to be a young dad, because your dad obviously is someone that you look up to and who inspires you. Right. And so it's a beautiful thing, you know, and like from my perspective, from like the single parent household, right? Like, remember I just was saying, like, I just envisioned myself as a businesswoman making my money, because all I saw my mom do was work. Right. Because she had to take care of me. Wow. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so it's like, it's so interesting. That's why our environments are so important. Yeah. Parenting is so important, whether that's, you know, whoever is in the household. It doesn't always have to be, you know, a female and a male, or it could be a male, female. It doesn't matter, right? I think it's just important that you're setting the right models, right? You're setting the right models for the children later to begin to model what a healthy marriage or relationship is or should look like, at least. Because if there's nothing there, it's kind of hard, because then you're drawing your own blueprint. You know, and you're going to make mistakes. And it's not to say that can't be done, because it can be. I mean, I feel like I'm doing it. You know, like I've had to create these new norms in my life that I've never seen, I've never witnessed. And of course, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes along the way. But I genuinely feel like I'm creating, I'm creating a new, I would say, norm of what I want my children to experience. Yeah. You know, so yeah, I think it's important to just, you know, have those kinds of models in your relationships growing up.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said before, like with me, I mean, it's come to the point where like even my dad is like, you know, making an influence, like, I guess kind of even outside of just our family, because I'm the youngest of 3. And so... Okay,
that's another dynamic.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, because you were only child.
Yeah. So it's a whole nother... So you're the youngest.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, so
you have your sister.
Yeah.
And then your brother.
So my brother's the oldest, and then I have a middle sister, and then it's me.
Got you.
Yeah.
It's another dynamics right there.
It's another dynamic.
Yeah.
Now, how is that being the only child?
So I'll say this. I was raised as an only child.
Uh-huh.
I have 2 brothers. 2 of my brothers, shout out to Christian and Andre, love them to death. They were raised by different moms. Mm-hmm. So we weren't all raised in the same household, mm-hmm. but of course have had experiences with each other growing up, mm-hmm. but we all weren't in the same house.
Right.
And so I still consider myself the big sister.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to look out for my brothers. I check on them, make sure they're safe. But now it's like I feel like the tables turned, and they're like, "Are you okay? Like we need to check in on you," which I really appreciate. Yeah. And so like I think for me, that our relationships, together really didn't grow super, super close the way we are now. Right. And I feel like they would all agree with me on this after our dad passed away. Yeah. And like after our dad passed away, they say tragedy brings people closer together. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so after our dad passed away, that really brought us closer together because I think for me at least, it brought an entire new perspective on life and the appreciation that I have for who they are. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get emotional, and just like how much I love them. Right. And, and not to take people in your life for granted because you just never know, And so I think for me, like having not be raised all in the same household, but it didn't really change anything because I'm still the big sister. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm still the big sister.
Holding that title.
But if somebody try to come for me, trust me, they will be there in a minute.
Yeah. For sure. I think me growing up with, I guess, an older sister and an older brother, I think that, me and my brother were in the same room. So we're like really close. Yeah. But then me and my sister are more closer in age, so we're close. So we have we're all like a really we have a really close relationship with one another. Mm-hmm. Like we always send each other TikToks or send each other little things or whatever. And then now that my brother has moved down to Atlanta for his job, and it's definitely been a little weird, but it was kind of just like an off script story, I guess you could say. But it was weird because. So, since I'm the youngest, my brother had went off to college, and so it was me and my sister. But my sister also went off to college when I was in high school, and so being the youngest of 3, I was always fighting for attention because my brother got practice, my sister got practice, I got practice or whatever it is. Yeah. Like it's not like being one child or 2 child and having a lot of attention to you. So I'm always in the house. True. Yeah, so I'm always fighting. When am I gonna get my speech in? And so, but when they had went away for college and stuff like that, it's just me in the house. And I'm like, why are my parents always in my face so much? You know what I'm saying? But it's because now that it's just me, they have more time and attention to kind of build an even stronger bond. And so I remember I was talking with my dad. I mean, we've had this conversation quite a few times, but he always talks about how when they left, it was a chance for him. Basically, God was basically telling him yo, this is a chance for you to finally build a even stronger relationship with your youngest son. Yeah. And so that's when we so
I love that. And I love y'all, by the way.
Yeah. And so we'll have my dad on a podcast soon. We're gonna have him on a podcast soon. But so I just remember, all I remember is just us being downstairs, getting a Little Caesars pizza and watching the Reds, the Washington football team, or watching the playoffs together, or going to see a WNBA game together, or whatever it may be. He was really prominent. And then we would also always go up to my sister's games, brother's games, and stuff like that, and things like that. But that moment and that time really helped, I guess, my development as a man, because I didn't have, with my other 2 siblings around, I didn't really have the amount of attention towards me, I guess you could say. But then those years where it was just me and my parents, that's where I felt they really instilled a lot of confidence in me, a lot of encouragement inside of me and things like that allowed me to, flourish, in years to come. So I'm definitely grateful for that. So
that's very interesting. I mean, because I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
I got all the attention.
Yeah.
To the point I was like, Mom, leave me alone. Oh God. But at the same time, I never thought about it that way, where it's like, like you're fighting to get that attention, but at the same time, it's really dope that although you were fighting to get the attention, your dad was there at almost every single game.
Yeah.
And I think that one just speaks to how amazing they are as parents. Yeah. And also, like, it made me think about, because I played field hockey in college. I ran track. I played field hockey in high school and in college. And I was really good.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I actually tore my ACL, just a sidebar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was terrible. And I still played, though, because I'm a G.
Yeah.
And so my mom, actually, because I was only child as well, like, she never missed the game either. She was there at every single game, to the point that it got very embarrassing. I don't know if your dad is like, well, maybe. My mom had ran onto the field hockey field.
Wow.
Because a call was a bad call. And then got escorted out of the game.
Wow.
But one, that just goes to show you how dedicated she was as a parent. So I just think it's an interesting dynamic when you add siblings into it as well, of just like the relationship dynamics of how that is with your parents or my parents or whomever, right? Yeah. And then also, like, how does that then influence relationships later? Yeah. Right? Because let's say, like, what if a person never did receive that attention as a child? How do you feel like that would influence their relationships, like their intimate relationships? Yeah. Do you think that would be like, okay, now one of their love languages, right, is that they are constantly looking for affirmations, or they're looking for someone to show them attention in different ways, whether it's like acts of service or whether it's like physical touch or like going out. So I think it's interesting that depending on how your relationships are with your parents and then with your siblings, it also then begins to develop what your like love languages are in your intimate relationships. Yeah,
and I think also I think there's two folds to that. I think that a lot of times, so my dad, he also came from a abusive home, and so when he was in that type of environment, he would say, like, I don't want my environment to be like this when I grow up. Yeah. And so he always wanted to build, something to where it was like we would never have to go what he went through. Yeah. And so I think it really just depends on the mindset that someone has and the different type of influences that they have along the way. I think that when it comes to, that whole aspect, it's like, how are you going to maneuver, moving forward? Because you can either be a product of your environment, or you can be self-reflective and be like, hey, this is what I went through, but I'm going to make sure I can do whatever it takes to get to, so I don't, inflict that on anybody else. Yep. And so I think it's just all about a mindset thing. And I think that, stuff like with your book, like is so
it's
impactful.
Like, better, you do better.
Yeah. And it's like, even with like your book, of how impactful that is, like somebody who may be going through those type of struggles or whatever can read this book and be like, start being more self-reflective and be like, you know what? Mindset. Yeah. And then being like, okay, I know where I've been, but that's not where I want to end up.
Exactly. And I think it's a collaboration between a person's mindset and also who they surround themselves with. Yes. Super key. Super key to, I think, success. Yeah. I think in developing healthy relationships, like all of those things are, to me, I think are key. Yeah. And
I guess, like, kind of wrapping up, we've been going strong.
I know.
It's been smooth.
But I feel like this is just regular.
Yeah, this is regular. Once we start getting
Exactly. Just be talking.
I guess kind of wrapping up with everything, Once again, an amazing book. Carry it with you. If you haven't got it already, make sure you go out. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. It's also on my website, humble plug, tenajmoody.com.
Yep.
And so, yes, people can either way, Amazon, but of course, support the author.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
But I still get my royalties. So it's
I guess, yeah. So, I guess last thing would be like, what are some, you've been doing this for 10 plus years now. What are some goals that you still have when, with your fight against, domestic violence and, getting that education out to other people? And I guess building your brand and building your, community and spaces to where you can make even more of an impact.
I love that question. Because, child, I have so much I want to do. I have so much I want to do. And I hope that I'm here long enough to do all of the things. I feel like God has put a lot of... I know this may sound weird, but if you get it, you get it. If you don't, I feel like... just stay with me here.
Okay.
I feel like I'm pregnant with so many gifts that I need to birth into this world.
Wow.
Right? And a big part of my focus and what I really want to do is to be able to provide the things that, one, I needed, and also provide the things that I know that the community that I directly work with need.
Right.
And I really want to create a space and have land, essentially, is the goal, where we can create a home that could be a centralized space for women survivors who have been incarcerated, for survivors in general, to have a safe space where they are seen, they're heard, they're acknowledged, they are provided with the right education that's needed so that, one, a person does not re-victimize themselves or put themselves in a situation, because, again, mindset, when you know better, you do better, right? And are provided with the right tools and are equipped with the right tools and resources that are accessible to them, and making sure that they're accessible to them, such as, like I mentioned before, like having housing, right, transportation, income, food, those kinds of things. And so, like, a big part of my goal is building this out for my community, and not only for my community, but having the community be a part of that process, because anything that's for us should be built by us,
right?
And I think that goes for anything, decisions, policy, whatever it is. Like, there should be a community-based approach to it. And so, like, my real goal and what I'm working towards is being able to provide as much as I can to the communities that I directly work with, and being able to create things that are new and innovative around education, because our world is changing, right? And I think you have to really meet people where they're at, especially working with the specific women that I work with, who are not only survivors, but are the intersections of surviving not only abuse, but also surviving incarceration, right? So, have to be very innovative with my approach. But overall, like, that's my mission. That's what I believe to be my calling is here for. And so I hope in a couple years, or maybe sooner, I can purchase land and I could build for that. But I think I'm doing that in a lot of different ways now. Whether that's through my workshops, whether that's through my online communities that I've created with women and other women as well, other women survivors, or whether that's through the partnerships that I've been able to develop through my social enterprise, Light to Life. And so, like, everything that I do is building a foundation. It's building a foundation to build upon and to grow taller. And to have a larger impact. Ultimately, I just want to be known to have a positive impact, and, like, when I leave this world and, like, transition to wherever that would be, is that, like, people could just say, like, she was a good person and she helped me. Like, I don't want a lot. Like, you know what I mean? I want to do a lot of things, but it's mostly just, I just want to make I know it sounds really corny, but like, I just want to make things better.
Yeah.
I really do. And make things better for women, make things better for Black women, make things better for Afro-Latino women, like, just for my community. And so that's the goal.
Sounds good.
We'll see. What do you want to do? I feel like I just went through a whole thing. What about you?
What do I want to do?
Yeah, like, do y'all know? Like, let's get into it really. And then I promise we'll end. I promise. I'm the host, y'all.
That is such a roast. What do I want to do?
What's your mark? Like, what do you want to leave here with?
What do I want to leave here with? I think I have a very creative mind, and I have just as you, I feel like I have a lot of ideas that I want to, put out there. And so I think that I want to get all those ideas out, and I think I want to do that in a way that's going to impact, hundreds of thousands of people. I think that's something that I can do, and I don't know what it is right now, but I definitely have goals as far as content creation and entertainment and things of that nature, but also just being in the community. I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted and we don't kind of like think about, just hanging out with the kids in the park or hanging out with the people outside or whatever it is, and somebody needs something in the community, whatever it be. I think kind of along the same as you're saying, like, make things better.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what we as humans are supposed to do, I guess you could say, is just leave it better than where it was before. Yeah. And so I think, God has placed a lot of things in my heart to want to do. And I feel like with him directing me and putting him first, like, I can just, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? Where do you want me? And so I'm just kind of just trusting it.
Where do you want me?
Yeah.
That part right there.
Yeah.
A big part of that, too, is, like, I'm hearing is just, like, surrendering.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But it's like, trusting and having faith that, like, you are walking in your purpose.
Right, yeah. And I think that God gives us gifts and gives us purpose and gives them meaning for a reason. And I think it's up to us to kind of figure out why is it that we're here.
Yeah.
And I think aside from, giving God glory, I think that it also is showing out as his creation, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that the best thing that we could have ever is just life itself. And so, like, however that is for you, and the things that God has blessed you with, and the talents that you have, like, go out and do something with it. Go out and make an impact. And because
everyone has it.
Everybody has one.
Everyone.
Everybody. I think everybody has something. Everybody has a purpose. I think everybody has a reason to be where they are.
Absolutely.
But I think it's just up to us recognizing that and going through that journey.
Yep.
And I think that's the best part of life is that it's unknown and you have to figure it out.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
One thing could be this way today, the next is like, whoa.
Yeah.
How did this happen? So absolutely.
Well, it's been I'm so glad that we finally got to it.
It's been a pleasure.
It really has been a great time talking to you, per usual. Yeah. I mean, like I said, like we would go another 2 hours if we could, but
for real, we should have our own talk show.
Yeah, but once again, this has been Tenaj Moody, and if you haven't got the book yet, it's a fantastic book. Carry it with you. Make sure you get it out. She has all of her, links, whatever it is, will all be in the description.
Yep.
So make sure you go check that out. Make sure you go support on Instagram and things like that. You're always on my feed doing something somewhere at some convention, something. So you want to make sure that you're up to date with everything that she's doing, and be a part. Is there a way that they can be a part of the things that you're doing?
Absolutely. So I think it's important that everything we were talking about today, there were so many different parts, but if someone is in need of resources or in need of support, if they are experiencing unhealthy relationships or abuse, I think my information should be in the I forget what it's called.
Description box.
Description box.
Yeah. We'll make sure it's there.
Yeah, and so like, please look towards me as a resource. I am a resource. And so I think, you know, connecting with me on Instagram as well as my websites, hopefully that will all be linked in there. I'm a pretty down-to-earth person, so if you need me, I'm here. Okay,
sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Tenaj. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody listening, and we'll be back on the next one.
Yes.
That was a good one.